introduce yourself and tell us about your office and your campaign.
Okay, very well. Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you guys. As far as my campaign goes, I'm unopposed, which makes my life a lot simpler. So as far as my campaign, there's just not a whole lot that I'm really doing. I am helping other candidates with their campaigns and then along the way. But yeah, I mean, there's just not a lot that I'm doing as far as that. I do participate in parades and things like that, but no door to door stuff like that. So I'm truly blessed in that regard. A little bit about me. I started to work in the assessor's office in 1989. My predecessor, Mr. Schwach, had just been elected. Matter of fact, he hadn't been sworn in yet when I came to work for the office. I actually was hired by Don Fenton years and years ago. And I was here for about 18 years. In that 18-year span, I worked my way through the ranks, becoming an apprentice appraiser all the way up to being a commercial real estate appraiser. And I did achieve my the state general certification from the state of Missouri as a real estate appraiser. After that, I was one of the local banks here in town, shooed me away. They offered me a position with them. I left the assessor's office in 2007. I turned around. I was there about 2.5 years. And then in 2009, came back to the assessor's office as the chief real estate appraiser. And then when Mr. Schwach decided that he wasn't going to run for anymore, I figured, well, I've got years of experience under my belt. I know the office pretty well, so I threw my hat in the ring, and I'm completing my first term. So I will say that I brag about my staff all the time, but I probably got, I think, one of the best staffs in county government. They are awesome. They make my life a lot simpler also. So I couldn't do it without them. And so we're just one big happy family and a team here that run this office. I consider my office basically divided in 3 sections, if you will. I have a mapping department, or GIS department, is what they call them now. And I have a cartographer, senior cartographer, and he's been here since the mid 90s, early 90s. I tell people this all the time. He's probably, I consider him the best mapper or cartographer in the state of Missouri. So Boone County is very fortunate to have him. When you have an individual in your office and you have title companies, and you have attorneys coming to him asking for advice, that's pretty impressive. So I can't say enough good things about that gentleman that works in that position. The second area of the office that we have is, of course, is personal property. We spend the majority of our time with personal property, to be honest with you. And it generates about $55 million in tax revenue annually for Boone County. And so it's about a fifth of the total revenue that the county collector collects. So it's no small amount. I mean, it's significant. And but that is personal property deals with automobiles, valuing automobiles, trucks, trailers, some manufactured housing, livestock, and then we, of course, we have the business personal property side of things in that regard. That is an area that if a business owns business assets and they use those assets to generate income for the business, then that is a taxable part, it's tangible personal property, and it can be taxed. So we do business personal property here as well. Aircraft, we have some local aircraft here that we value. A lot of the bigger jets and things like that are pretty much held under an LCC. Those are state assessed. The state basically gives us the value, and we have to apportion it based on the miles that they fly in the state of Missouri and in Boone County. So And then that leads us to the third area of the office, and that is the real estate side of things. We value close to about, I think our parcel count from the last record that I had from the STC was about 74,000 parcels in Boone County. I think when I first came to work here in 1989, I think we were somewhere in the neighborhood of the 45, between 45 and 50,000 parcels. So that's grown considerably in that short amount of time. And but their job is to basically have several appraisers on staff. They go out based on building permit data that we get from the city of Columbia, surrounding cities, and of course Boone County. And they go out, they find any new construction that's been constructed, and we add that to the tax rolls. You know, they do a phenomenal job. They're all over the county every year. So we're top to bottom, anywhere from Centralia down to Claysville. So we cover a large area. And a little bit about the cycles of the office. I like to think about it in if we divide it up into personal property and real estate again. Personal property, every January 1st, I mail out a personal property declaration, and it looks something like this. I don't know whether you can see that or not, but those come out every January. And all we need you to do on that is just verify the information that's on it. It'll have the vehicles that were listed on your previous year's tax bill listed on it. So if nothing's changed, all you need to do is just sign it, date it, and get it back to me before March 1st. If you have traded vehicles and one of the vehicles is no longer, you know, in your possession, and you've replaced it with another one, basically all you need to do is just mark the old vehicle off, write the new vehicle underneath it, sign it, date it, and get it back to me before March 1st. The March 1st is the statutory deadline date to when those declarations are due back to my office. But there is a caveat to that. Since Boone County is a first-class county, which means that the assessed value of Boone County is over $1 billion, then I have the opportunity to do a second mailing, which I always do. Those normally come out sometimes towards the end of March, and that extends that deadline date to May 1st. Now, if I don't get your declaration back by May 1st, then if I get it after the fact, it's subject to a late assessment fee. And that late assessment fee is based on the total value of the account. So it ranges from a low of $15 to a high of $105. And there's a scale in statute that defines what penalties apply and how to apply them. It's based on the, like I said, the total assessed value of the account. So, and then, of course, we take that, we process it, and then we turn that over to the collector, or the collector at the end of the year. He generates the tax bill for personal property on that. Real estate's a little bit different. Real estate is on a 2-year cycle, and starting probably somewhere in the neighborhood of August before the year of January 1st of the year, we start going out, we start data collecting, and my appraisers are out in the field until, it normally takes them some time into February to complete the data collection. Then we come back once all the data collection's been entered into the computer system that we have. We value it. That takes about a month and a half or so to get those values certified and how we're happy with them through the appraisers. Once that's done, and now we're towards the April timeframe, we start generating change of assessment notices. And those come out around the first part of May, and we are free to talk to individuals. So if you get a notice and you're not happy with it, we are free to talk to individuals on an informal basis up until June 30th. After June 30th, I basically turn my books over to the county clerk, Brianna, and she holds the book at that point in time. And that's not the end, though. If you still want to appeal it, you can formally appeal it. And that is statutorily the deadline to appeal it to the Board of Equalization with a formal appeal is the second Monday in July. And once that date comes and goes, if you call me and say, Kenny, I got this notice and I'm not happy with my value and it's August, I'm going to tell you, well, I'm sorry. The deadline date has passed. Be more than happy to take a look at it for you for the next year. That happens, that appeal process and change notices and that process happens annually. Now, I mentioned it was a 2-year cycle. In odd numbered years, the assessors in the state of Missouri are at liberty to change values of the reassessment year. It's up to the assessor based on the current market conditions as to whether or not they elect to change the values. And the market we've had here lately, the real estate market, we've seen some things that are just flat crazy. If somebody would have ever told me, Kenny, we would have seen double-digit increases in property values in a single year. No, ever. Well, we saw it. And thank gosh that the market has kind of simmered down a little bit. It's coming back to some normality, if you will, which is a good thing. But in that odd numbered year, I pick up new construction. And if I go through the reassessment, then well, I think the last time in 2023, when we did this, we sent out 54,000 change notices. And, we heard from a lot of folks. A lot of the questions are, how much are my taxes going to go up? Things like that, which those are pretty easy to kind of estimate at that point in time. The harder ones are the ones where they just, they don't agree with our value and we have to, we'll come back out, we'll take another look at the property, whatever we need to do to see if we can't resolve that. And, but anyhow, in an even numbered year, though, the only thing that I can change in this 2024 was an even numbered year. The only thing that I can change is new construction, or if something has changed with the property. I just can't arbitrarily increase a value just because, it needs to be increased with the market. I have to wait until the next odd numbered year. Now, any new construction that I put on in an even numbered year has to be valued the way it was in the previous odd numbered year. That keeps everybody on a level playing field. So I'm not treating a new home that I'm putting on in 2024 differently than I put a new house on for 2023. So anyway, but if one thing I failed to mention, if anybody has any questions, by all means, you can holler them out. I'll be more than happy to try to answer any that you might have. But I will say this, I did mention about the total assessed value of Boone County being over $1 billion. When I came to work in 1989, early 90s, the assessed value of Boone County was about $600 million. This year, the preliminary assessed value total in Boone County was about $3.8 billion. So there has been a lot of growth. And you can drive around the city of Columbia, you can see a lot of that growth. Drive around Boone County, you can see a lot of that growth. We're kind of seeing some unique things that are happening. We're seeing a lot of growth in the rural communities, Hallsville, Centralia. We always saw it in Southern Boone, Ashland. That's always been a growing, thriving, kind of a veteran community, if you will, because of its proximity to Columbia and proximity to Jeff City with 2 workforces. But we're seeing a lot of growth in these rural northern towns, which is phenomenal. Actually, Sturgeon we're seeing new plats and new lots in Sturgeon, Missouri, which, that's just something that out of all my years working in this office, Sturgeon just was it just didn't grow. Well, we're seeing growth now, and rooftops going up there, which is awesome. So, but I mean, in a nutshell, that's kind of what my office does. That's kind of what we do here. I mean, I tell people this all the time. I think I'm unopposed because nobody wants my job. And You know, I love what I do. I don't know what I'd do if I wasn't doing what I'm doing. But yeah, and I love the taxpayers of Boone County. I was born and raised here. I'm about a fifth generation Boone County and sixth generation Boone Countyan. So I've got some deep roots here in the county. But yeah, like I said, if you have any questions, I'll be, more than happy to try to answer any if anybody's got any. And so
Any questions?
Yeah.
Herb or Sue?
Both of us, go ahead.
Go ahead, Sue.
No, I don't. I'm
She's
still-
working on hers.
Okay.
Yeah, toughy. Mine's simple.
okay.
You referred to a period from August to some time in which members of your staff would do data collection. Would you tell me what data, what variables, and what the models that you're building are, or at least something about them? Because
Sure.
you're not actually looking at every single parcel one after another each year, I don't believe.
No, you're absolutely correct. We cannot review every single parcel in Boone County. You're absolutely right. When my staff goes out to a property, it's normally because there's some kind of a building permit or we've been asked to come back out and review the property. So what they do is, if it's like, for example, if it's a new home, they will come out, they'll either talk to the owner, talk to the builder if it's under construction. If nobody's home, we will leave a door hanger on the door. They will physically stretch a tape around the perimeter of the house. And then we try to do the best we can as far as bedroom, bathroom counts and stuff like that. If we leave the door hanger, like I said, property owner's there, the builder's there, we normally can get a lot of that information from that individual as to the room counts and type of finish and stuff like that that's going to be in the home. Once that has been done, they bring that data back. We basically, every piece of property parcel in Boone County has a property record card. They fill out the property record card with the data, and we enter it into our what we call a CAMA system, which is Computer Assisted Mass Appraisal System. The first thing that it does once we have that data entered is it generates a cost approach. In other words, we went out, we've talked to builders, we've got a cost guide that we use here that's nationally recognized to kind of give us indications as to what those what it costs to build that home. And we come up with a value based on that. We depreciate it for its age. If it's a new home, it doesn't have a whole lot of depreciation on it. And we take all forms of depreciation. We look at physical, we look at functional, and we look at economic obsolescence also. So those are the primary three functions or three types of depreciation that's related to real property. Some of the physical stuff can be cured. Some of the physical stuff can't be cured. We take that into consideration too. If, for example, somebody comes out and they put a new roof on the house, we're not necessarily going to change the value of that home because of that new roof, just like we won't lower it because the roof is 20 years old. Now, there are exceptions to that rule. If the roof has got problems and it's leaking and it's causing other issues with the home, we can make adjustments for that type of stuff. But just because you replace the roof, you replace your air conditioner, flooring, stuff like that, we don't necessarily change the value of the home. We consider that deferred maintenance. We know those types of things are going to have to be renewed on the property over its lifetime. So, that type of stuff, like I said, we just chalk that as to deferred maintenance and pretty much leave things alone. But once we have the cost number on the home, then we come in and we add a current land value. In other words, what's the underlying lot worth? What's the underlying acreage worth that is attributable to residential? Now, on acreages, if you've got a house on like 10 acres, we will take a 2.5 acre primary site and we will value that 2.5 acres and put that in the residential class. The remaining 7.5 acres is valued as ag land. And that's based on its ag productivity value as opposed to its true market value. And those are defined by statute and those are set by the state legislature on a biannual basis. But once we have the land value and the building cost value, we have a cost approach. So we know that's one approach that we use. We do have the capability here in Boone County. I do send out sales questionnaires on every transfer that occurs in the county. If you buy a piece of property, we get a letter in the mail from me. We ask questions on there. One of the questions that we do ask, of course, is, well, what'd you pay for the property? And I get about a 50% response from those sales questionnaires. And that once we get those, we enter those, that creates our sales database. And from that sales database, then in areas where there's a lot of market activity, like City of Columbia, some of these like Ashland, things like that, where there's a lot of activity, we can actually pull 5 comparable sales of what those, properties that are similar to the subject property, and we can come up with a value based on those comparable sales. We make adjustments just similar as to what a fee appraiser does. The only difference is it's all done computerized. It's done with a regression analysis type of thing. And then we come up with an adjusted sale price for each one of the sales. And from that, we can derive a market value of that home. So
Just to clarify, you really can only deal with what the house looks like from the outside, right? So the value of internal finishes or anything don't count.
well, yeah, they do to some degree. Unfortunately, you're right. We cannot get in every home. But we have a pretty good indication, subdivisions, especially the newer subdivisions, we have a pretty good indication as the quality of the finish. And from the sales data that we get, we can, calibrate our system to, account for that type of finish. Now, we do make, on every property record card that we have, we assign a grade to the house. C average would be just an ordinary home with traditional type trim and stuff like that. The higher the grade, in other words, if it's an A or a B, it goes A, B, C, D, all the way down to D, then and an E also. But if it's an A home, that's telling us that, hey, the quality of finish on the interior of that home is going to be higher than a C home. The exterior is finished, got a higher quality finish to it. Whereas, a D home might be a home that's got, some kind of like a vinyl siding, stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, that there are grade differences that we do take into account for. So.
Scott, question?
I also had a question.
Thank you for an excellent program, Mr. Mohr, and thank you for your service. Following Tom Schwach is like following Tom Brady. So you're doing a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Tom and I worked together, many, many years. And I will say he was a great teacher. He was a great mentor. He never wanted anybody in the office not to have the ability to learn. So he kind of took me under his wing. He taught me a lot of things. I just took what he taught me, the values that he instilled in me as an appraiser. And I'm just trying to apply those as the best of my ability. So, but I do appreciate the kind words.
Well, thank you. Let me ask you excuse me, Al, do you want to say something?
No, go ahead, Scott.
Have you got another speaker coming on?
Around 12:30, but it's not here yet. So
Well, real quick, other people have questions, but I know for particularly your job has been difficult for years and decades because it is a non-certificate of value county. How many counties in Missouri now have certificate of value requirements, and how many, like Boone, do not? And has there been any significant movement or discussion or rumbles about converting Boone County to a certificate of value county so there wouldn't be any question about what property sells for?
Yeah, there are probably, I would say, upwards of around maybe 4 to 5 counties in the state of Missouri that do have certificate of value. Most of those counties are a charter type county as opposed to the way Boone County is. In other words, they have a county constitution that allows for certificate of value. There has been movement down in the state legislature. There's bills filed every year. I am the legislative chairperson for the Missouri State Assessors Association, so I'm down at the Capitol quite a bit during session. And keeping an eye on bills and stuff. But there are bills that are filed every year. They don't go very far. There's certain reasons that individuals claim that, you know, it could hurt the market. You know, I don't know whether it would or not. But no, there's nothing that statutorily that would require Boone County to do a certificate of value.
Are the half of the sales that do voluntarily comply and give you the value of the purchase available to the public or not?
They are. I do caution individuals, you know, when we do divulge a sale price that's been turned into us, because everything in this office is public record with a few exceptions. If it's a record, if it's a closed record due to the Judicial Privacy Act that just went into play a couple of years ago, or a program through the Secretary of State's office called Safe at Home, I cannot divulge any information on those records, whether it be real or whether it be personal property, either way. But yeah, that data, and I tell people all this all the time. When they do get a sale price from us or they see a sale price from us, I tell them, you know, that is what's been reported to us. I have no way other than that form that is returned to us to actually verify that sale unless that property owner comes in and wants to dispute their value. At that point in time, I can ask for certain documents that would more or less codify that is what it did sell for. So we're kind of at the taxpayer's board when they do send that back.
Are assessments available in a public database in the way that property ownership is?
Yes. If you go to showmeboone.com and you go to the assessor's webpage on there, you can do a real property search. You can actually go down a little further. If you get down into the mapping section, you can get into our parcel identification viewer. And if you open that up, it brings up a map of Boone County. You can search by owner name, by address, or by parcel number, either one. Or you can take the map and you can just zoom in on it. And then there's a little upside down teardrop down at the bottom of the page. Click on that and you can just click on the map and it will identify the parcel. It'll bring it up and it will show you the ownership. It will also show you the deed books and pages of when the person purchased the property. You can actually, if you click on one of those, it'll take you over to the recorder's site and you can actually view the warranty deed that was used to transfer that property, or the trustee's deed, whatever type of deed it was. There is a link also on there to, if you click on it, you can see the collectors. It takes you over to the collector's office. You can see what the tax bills were. And then, of course, it does have information. If it's residential type property, it will have information about the home. It'll have square footage, bedroom, bathroom counts, stuff like that. Commercial property is not out there because the way our system handles commercial property, it would be so many codes, people wouldn't understand it. But it does have the total value. It does have the total assessed value out there on that website.
I do have a chat question from Dave Taylor, and he asks, do you use aerial photography to identify new construction? And also, are the large McMansons, as he puts it, going up in southern Boone County having an effect on other property values.
The large mansions.
McMansons.
Wow. Let's start out with the mansion question. Yeah, we have had several large homes that have been built here in Boone County. Unfortunately, the issue with a lot of these homes is that you know, you get somebody that sinks $5 million, $6 million into a home. We just don't have the market here that's going to necessarily support that kind of value. Most recent research that I've done on way those things when they do sell here, which is very rarely, but it seems like they get maybe 50 cents on the dollar of what the actual cost of that home is, because there's just not that many buyers. Plus, if you're going to spend that much money on building a home or having a home, typically you're going to build what you want. So you know, that there's several impacts there that does hurt the marketability of those type of homes. And what was the other question? I'm sorry.
About using aerial photography to identify where new construction is occurring.
Yes, we look those over, yeah, and we do have a way of comparing previous aerial to a current aerial, and we can identify, you know, a lot of rooftops. Most everything that we pick up off of aerial photographs are like auxiliary structures. Somebody will build a pole barn, something like that, and that we use those for that type of surface. Most of the housing, though, like single family dwellings and stuff like that, we normally keep a good eye and track on those based on building permit data.
Last question, Herb, and we need to move on.
Okay,
Or so.
it's a quick couple for me. The number of staff you have?
The number of staff that I've got right now is 15.
Okay, pretty small.
Yeah.
And the number of houses that sell is much less than right during COVID, right? The
Yes.
turnover of housing has changed, and also, do you have kind of what is the average value of a homes in Columbia?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the market has kind of slowed to some degree. I think higher interest rates that are beginning to come down and, you know, kind of hampered a little bit of that. Plus, there just wasn't there was a lack of inventory too, there for a while too. Builders just couldn't build because the supply lines and stuff. And then as far as what the last part of the question was.
Well, I was asking the average value of homes and
Average value, okay.
And whether the number of homes being sold the turnover has decreased quite a bit since COVID, I gather.
Yes, yeah, you're right about that. It has slowed. And as far as the average sale price of a home, on the last statistics that I saw, and I look at the Columbia Board of Realtors site, and they do have statistics out there, and the median price of a home here in Boone County was somewhere in the neighborhood of the low 300s.
Well, thank you very much for enlightening us and taking your time to be with us today. And congratulations on your reelection.
Thank you.
And if I remodel my home, I will remember to keep those improvements to under $5 million.
Well, thank you all very much.
In my subdivision here in North Columbia.
Okay. It's been a pleasure. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Chimene Schwach is our next guest, and she is currently the Director of Advocacy, Development, and Outreach for Services for Independent Living, and is running for Public Administrator of Boone County. So Chimene, welcome, and tell us a little bit about how you're doing, how your campaign is, and what do you foresee for the new job?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. It's really nice to be able to join you today. I I feel really boring next to Kenny and all of his really great information that he just gave out. But so I am Chimene Schwach, for those of you who have not met me in the past. And I live here in Columbia and have lived here for almost 16 years now. I have 2 kids and a husband and a dog. I just got a giant, literally, it just walked in my house. I have a 100-pound Rottweiler puppy. And I say that in all sincerity, a 100-pound Rottweiler puppy. So hopefully he doesn't get upstairs. We put the gates up so he won't run up here and say hello to everybody today. And I have, while living here in Columbia, I moved here from Nashville, but I'm originally from Kansas City. I graduated high school in Kansas City. I graduated from college in Springfield. So I always like to say I'm a bear and not a tiger. So I graduated from there. So I've kind of lived in a lot of, when I was really little, we lived in St. Louis as a little kid. So I've lived in most of our major areas here in Missouri. And it's kind of odd to say that I've been here 16 years, because pretty soon I will have lived here longer than any place else in my life, which seems odd to me. But I moved here. We moved here because my husband was in insurance, but I've always volunteered in the community and worked in at different times for not-for-profits. And over the course of my career, I've worked for not-for-profits pretty much exclusively, save the one time I worked for my husband's insurance firm for a couple of years. And mostly I've always worked in social services and not-for-profits. And currently that's what I do with Services for Independent Living. Like I said, the Director of Advocacy, Development, and Outreach. And that sort of dovetails very nicely with the Public Administrator's Office. Many people have never heard of the Public Administrator's Office unless they've had some interaction with that office. It is the office here in town that deals with decedent estates. So folks who have passed away and had property, and there is no one else to step in to take care of that estate when folks die. And decedent estates come to the Public Administrator's Office and to the probate court by happenstance. I wish there was like some better system, but truly it's one of those things where someone passes away and maybe the mail is stacking up, or there have been property notices from some other government office on a property, or the taxes went unpaid, and then somebody discovers that somebody has died and that the estate needs to be taken care of. And then the probate court assigns that estate to the Public Administrator's Office. The Public Administrator's Office also, so that's about a quarter of what the office does. And then the major part of what the office does is we take care of people in Boone County who have been determined once again by the probate court to be incapacitated at some level or another. So that can be as low as guardianship, where people still have the right, they still have the right to vote. They make a lot of their own decisions on a day-to-day basis, but the public administrator kind of guides maybe some of their health decisions and things like that, to full conservatorship, where the Public Administrator's Office makes decisions for everything. It's essentially a parent in situ type kind of thing. So you are there, you make all of their decisions, both financially and for their physical care. And that's the majority. And the majority of those folks in the county have a co-occurring mental health disorder and or physical disability that may affect their processes. Once again, we are ruled by statute. So the probate court alone can assign people to the Public Administrator's Office. Folks do call and say, "Oh, I've got a person. I think they need a guardian." There's still a whole process. There's an application process, but folks get assigned through the probate court. And then there's a little tiny bit of what most people would consider orphans, taking care of their estates as well. We don't have very many of those because most little kids have someone in their lives who can manage that for them if they are left without parents, but there is a small portion of that. Our caseload currently in Boone County is about 425 to 450 cases at any given moment. With that, that's annually right now, and at any given moment, there's really about 150 that are super active that require a lot of care. The public administrator is on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And sometimes people say, "Oh, why did you want that job?" And because 24 hours, 7 days a week is a lot. We do have there's currently a staff of 9 in the office. We have a couple of positions open, and I have the benefit of running unopposed. So I will be the next public administrator. So I've had the luxury and privilege of getting to start to interact with the staff now, and getting to go to probate court hearings already, and starting to, so that we can do some transition over that. Let's see. I don't really I hate when I'm just talking. So do people have any questions so far about any of the things I've said?
Is it a commission-based job now, or is it a salary-only based job?
So it isn't. So as an elected official in Boone County, we have this MOU agreement between all the elected officials that I think was put in place around 2009. But we all get paid the same amount. So we all have, every elected official except for Kip as the lead commissioner, everyone makes the same amount. So we all have the same salary. And so it is a salary. And it is, we get retirement, but we don't have benefits. Like we don't get sick leave and things like that, or vacation.
Then some of the estates you handle have assets. Many of them, of course, don't. But of the ones that do have assets, you could charge a fee. And does that fee go into the county? And if so, do the expenses of the office exceed the amount of the fees taken in, or what is the total expenses of the office versus the total amount of the permissions and fees you get off the estates that do have assets?
These are great questions. These are like the best questions I've had. So I have just been learning all of these. So our expenses in the office do exceed the fees that we would be able to garner from estates. So the commission, we have a budget. So the budget process is, the finalization for the budget process is right now, essentially in the fall. So I did not make the budget for this year because I am not the public administrator, but or for next year, because of course we're talking fiscal year 2025. But there is, we have the smallest budget of any county office. It's allocated pretty much, we use some general funds, we use fees from the estates, but the budget is smaller than it needs to be, I will say. We've already started talking about what that looks like over the next few years, because we have to, sort of project out. We do have attorneys' fees get paid generally out of the estates of those folks, and those the estates of everyone who's on the public administrator's docket. Now, a lot of the consumers or wards have no estate. So you're kind of trying to, for my intents and purposes, you're trying to squeeze blood from a turnip, and it just doesn't happen. So we do have budget, we have line item budget items for legal expenses for folks. But yeah, we do not make as much money from the estates to cover the office expenses. And that is one of the things that I will be tasked with, is figuring out. We also don't pay our attorneys. Like, our attorney is great. Our current attorney, he's been the attorney and he's the attorney on all of the cases currently. And I feel like as we get up to when he started like 35 years ago, there were like 200 like 200 would have been a big caseload. Now we're up to 450. I feel pretty strongly that we're going to have to take on more than one attorney for some of these cases. It doesn't feel like a great idea for me to have one person. And if something happens that one person, then we suddenly have to find another. Sue and Herb, you had a question?
Yes. Can you tell me a little about trends in the workload of the public administrator's office? I have a
Yeah.
vague memory that the number of clients, I believe you used that term, under your supervision in a year used to be higher. Or am I wrong in that?
I don't think it was higher. I think this is about as high as it's ever been. When I first ran for public administrator in 2016, and the caseload then was about pretty similar, except that there was about 400 on the caseload then, but not as many estates, not as many decedent estates, and the trend in the offices. So there is a public administrator for all 114 counties in Missouri. They're all elected positions, except for St. Louis and Kansas City. The trend, like historically, like 100 years ago when public administrators started, mostly you were taking care of small caseloads of really, mostly elderly folks with no family. So a trend that has happened over the last really 50, 60 years is that it has gone from really being just seniors who maybe have dementia or, some kind of Alzheimer's or something, or they're just so elderly that they are and frail, and that they're not able to take care of property or manage things for themselves, and they have no family. So over the last 50 years, that has switched slowly to more folks who are have mental health, have usually more than one. So we say co-occurring disorders. So it's usually some kind of mental health issue and a developmental or acquired disability. So, and that age has dropped. The average age for those folks on the administrator's caseloads across, and this is true for across the country, has dropped. Now the population is aging, right? So like it's one of those interesting things where the age dropped because we were dealing with more people who were adults, whose parents maybe had not, could not make arrangements for what happened to them after the parents deceased, or, and so we have a lot of younger folks, but now those younger folks who are in their 30s and 40s are now, going to be in their early 50s. And as the population ages, we're going to see that the population on the administrator's caseload actually is going to age again. So it went down, but now the average age is going to go up over the next 10 years or so. But we still start with folks sometimes when they're a lot younger than that. Other trends, what other trends would we be interested in besides like that we see in the office? There's also no place to interaction with the police department, and the judiciary we see that trend going up increasingly every year. That has not gone down. That is just going straight up. And that is because we have no place to put people. And particularly here in Missouri, we are not a state with a robust safety net for marginalized folks of any kind, let alone folks with co-occurring mental health disorders. And one of the things we see is that we have all these rules in place for housing, right? For public housing, you got to live in a special way. You got to behave in a special way. If you have some behaviors like you throw things or you get loud or you shove somebody, which are all not always with folks with mental health issues, but when you work in the field of mental health, like if somebody is schizophrenic or somebody has a behavior issue, that behavior issue doesn't go away. So we have behaviors that go with co-occurring mental health disorders that are incongruent with the rules for public housing. So then people get kicked out of public housing, and then they can't get back in because they've broken all of these rules. The rules are pretty strict, too strict in my opinion. They don't take into account people with disabilities and their particular needs. So we say, well, you've got to be perfect, and now you've not been perfect, and now you have no place to live, and then we have no place to put them. As a result, we have a lot of people sitting in nursing facilities and assisted living facilities, which are not what we would call least restrictive environments, because there is no place else to put them. And we also have about 300 people sitting in jails across the state of Missouri who haven't done anything and don't really need to be in jail, but there's no place else to put them. There are a few people who are living in emergency rooms across the state of Missouri because there's no place to put them. Housing is the number one issue for public administrators, where to put people, how to house them. Like we said before, a lot of there are estates with assets, but the majority of folks have almost no assets, and they can't pay market value for rent and housing. And so that is our biggest issue there. And so we see that trend happening and becoming worse. There's not actually right now we're still on the upward trajectory of that becoming worse and not becoming better. Clearly, here in Missouri, some of the things, like you all may be aware, the federal government, DOJ, announced this past summer that Missouri was in violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Most people think it's a broad ruling, but it was a really narrow case, and it just affects people who have mental illness, who live in nursing, who are in nursing facilities. But even that number of people is far too high. And public administrators were specifically named in that DOJ suit. Well, I don't know if it's a suit, but in that, when they decided that the state was in violation, public administrators were singled out as being, not necessarily responsible, but being, culpable in keeping people in least restrictive environments. So those are some trends we see that are coming and that we're going to have to work on.
Got several questions from the chat. David Robinson asks how your prior experience at CASA has prepared you for this position.
Oh, I think both my time at CASA, which for those of you who don't know is Court-Appointed Special Advocates. It is a program for kids in foster care who are victims of child abuse and neglect. And so I used to work at CASA as an advocate supervisor. And the thing about CASA that really helped me here is that I'm really familiar with a lot of our judges already. I used to appear in family court. So CASA is mostly in family court, but you're also in juvenile criminal court and sometimes adult criminal court, depending on sometimes a consumer's interaction with the judiciary. So I am familiar with a lot of our judges, and all kids who are in that system get appointed a guardian ad litem. It is very similar in the public administrator's office. Every consumer has a guardian ad litem. It's generally the same population of attorneys who work with kids who also work with the adults. So I am familiar with this group of attorneys and the judges. And probate court does act. It's one of those things, local court, it feel like while I literally have 2 volumes like this big of Estates 1 and 2 and books on guardianship in the state of Missouri. But while you have all these procedures that take place, every court in different counties is different. So you have to kind of know those folks and how they work. So I do have already relationships established there. And so I think that's very helpful in that people know me and I know them and I know how they work. in terms of the court system. I think that's really maybe the extent. I mean, there's a lot of stuff with managing people and caseloads from CASA, but really the big portion was already having been familiar with the court system here.
Dave Taylor asks about what percentage of caseload is a result of hotline reports or similar kinds of actions from the Department of Health.
So that is a question I cannot answer at this point. I do not know. There are a lot of things in the office that I'm given access to right now, but I don't know about that. I can tell you that the Department of Mental Health, in terms of people hotlining, so just with the jail population, I cannot comment. Like, I think they're further behind with the general population who makes calls, but the Department of Health for emergency mental health evaluations is a year behind right now in the state of Missouri. So when Sheriff Carey gets somebody in there in the jail and they think that there's a problem and they ask for a mental health evaluation, that person, this is one of the reasons why we have 300 people sitting in jails and things like that, is because it is very difficult to get them. You may be able to get an emergency evaluation, but to get a full-blown assessment and evaluation and then be able to get them services that are required, they are a year behind in those. And so then, like, my agency where I work now, I have several seniors on our caseload. We are mandated reporters. I report people all of the time. Most of the time, nothing happens, even when they're frequent flyers with the fire department and joint communications, like they call 911 like 3 times a week, right? And the fire department goes out and the police department goes out, or the sheriff department goes out. They're all mandated reporters too, but they don't generally, if people are sort of still muddling along and in their own space, we report it, but almost nothing happens. Department of Mental Health will call back and be like, well, what can you do to help this person? I'm like, already, I'm telling you, like, I'm calling you because I can't get beyond this point with this person. So the system is very backed up that way. But I don't know from the public administrator's office exactly how many people get hotlined to, because they would get hotlined to the police department and the sheriff's department, but not directly. We would never get someone directly that way because they got to go through the probate court first.
Kathy asks, who lives over your shoulder? Whose product provides oversight for your office, and how's that done?
Yeah, so I don't know that there is any particular group of that there's a particular oversight that happens. It's usually the court, right? We are run by probate court statutes. So local judges are really the ones who probably do the most. I met with another county's public administrator last week for coffee, and the way he was appointed was that in 2019, the person in his county who was the public administrator had been doing something that upset the judges, and the judges were like, it's time for you to retire, or you can start to come to, or we're going to bring you to court over these things. So I think judges have the most oversight, but they don't actually, there was another public administrator this past summer who was indicted on embezzlement. I don't really know how that happened yet. I don't have any background. Nobody's giving me the secret sauce on that yet, because I'm still just a candidate for most people. So I can't get all the information, but that public administrator, because they were embezzling and up on criminal charges, then that public administrator gets removed by the court and asked to resign. But these are elected positions, and there's not a lot short of some sort of egregious criminal behavior. There's not a lot of oversight in Missouri for elected officials like this, which is why it usually gets to that big space. Now, I'd like to put in some oversight, much like Jenna. I'm going to, Raydell, our treasurer, who's really done some great things to create some more transparency and accountability. I would like to see some more things put back in place with this office as well. There used to be an advisory committee. 12 years ago, there was an advisory committee. It hasn't really been, doesn't exist anymore. So those are some things that I would like to see put in place, both some consumer advisory committees and some outside advisors. But we will have to see what the office really looks like when I get in there and can really dig in, because I don't currently have access to all of the information.
Scott asks, are you bonded and at what level? And Dave asks, and you asked us about a lot of the county offices, is there a reason why it's a partisan elected position, and should it be?
Yeah. So yes, we are bonded. Even to run as a candidate, you have to be bondable. So you fill out a form and you get someone to, you give them some information. I will tell you that when I ran in 2016, I had to fill out a really long form and give a lot more of my information. And in this past year, when I filed, I did not have to give as much information as I gave in 2016 to determine, and the bond amount had decreased as a candidate, like what you could be bondable for was lower this time than it was the first time. So I'm guessing that there have been some statutory changes at the legislative level around that. But we are bonded. The county pays for the bond. And I think it's up to $500,000. It's not, it's not a ton, but it is a bonded position. And I do not know why we are elected. It seems to be about 50% across the nation. Some places folks are elected, and some places, depending on, so like in St. Louis and in Kansas, in Jackson County, St. Louis County and Jackson County, they have a different form of county government. Like Kenny was talking about, they have constitutions, and their charter is different. And so their executive, like the Jackson County executive, appoints the public administrator there. So they're appointed in those two counties here. There are places in the country where they are under under different guises. Everywhere it's really the probate court, but different places have different rules about how. But here in Missouri, it has been an elected position since the 1800s. So I don't know who decided that it needed to be elected, but that's just the way it's been for the last 100-something years.
Last question from Sue or Herb.
This is actually a quick comment, not a question. We thank you very much again for making yourself available for this office. We think you'll do a wonderful job. Your combination of the values I know in you, or we know in you, and your breadth of your experience makes you exceptionally well suited for this position. No matter what, of course, but it's obvious why nobody wants to run against you.
Well, I appreciate that. That's very kind. I did start out with 4. I've gone through 4 folks this year. That's been very interesting in terms of learning about Missouri election law and arcane little places and how that works. It's been one of those years all over the state of Missouri. We found out about arcane election law this year. But I do hope that I really believe that I can make some changes in this office, and that I can be a voice, like that we can elevate the job. Like, it's not, like, back to Scott's thing, it is not necessarily a partisan position, right? Nobody's going to say, hey, are you a Democrat or are you a Republican, to some to a person who gets assigned to the office. And it is not one that has particularly a lot of political clout, but I do believe there is more space than the office currently uses. I think there's more space for the office to advocate for things like affordable housing and least restrictive environments, and to do that at both the legislative the state and federal legislative level. And I do think there is space for us to join the conversation, which our current county commissioners already do, with Janet Thompson leading the way with that. There is definitely space for us to be involved in what is fair housing and affordable housing and what our safety net looks like for the population in general, and not just those folks that the public administrator serves, because we intersect with so many other groups. And I will say, as I leave you guys, that I appreciate you all so much for always asking such good questions. Most people don't even ask me questions about bonding, and they don't ask me questions about how we get our fee structure, what our fees are, and how we, make money or have money to help the folks on the caseload. So I very much appreciate the thoughtful and well, intentioned questions. So, and I am always around. If you all, I used to be a I don't think I have a Muleskinners membership. I'll fix that. But I used to be on the executive board for Muleskinners, so I always appreciate everything you all do as an organization.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing time with us today. You didn't have to, since you're unopposed, but we really appreciate the insight into your office, your
Thank you.
future office.
I ditto what Herb and Sue said. Chimene,
Thank you.
Okay, let's get on with our regular meeting.